Well, welcome to YouTube, but LinkedIn's still waiting, so we'll carry on regardless, shall we, Mike? LinkedIn can always catch up later. Here's your theme tune. Hello and welcome to the Power Hour. My name is John Drinkwater. Hiding in the background is Mike Latter, and we're here to be controversial today. Most controversial because I'm going to run 3 presentations merged into one. OBS, fantastic piece of software, could be about to die, could be about to blow up in a positive way. The question is, which of these two is it going to be? Is it going to be growth or death? And the reason is artificial coding, vibe coding, AI, whatever you want to call it. It's having a big impression on OBS. And the reason it is, as far as I'm concerned, is that OBS has a big problem, which is also its strength. But for AI, it's a problem because OBS is open source, which means you can code for it vibely without much effort because the code is there to be seen. So vibe coding with OBS is suddenly very easy to do. So we're going to meander through this conversation today about the question of whether AI and vibe coding is going to replace OBS or maybe reinvent it. We'll have a look through the traditional uses of it, the untraditional uses of it, and I look forward to your comments wherever you are, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, or in the studio with us. Where do you think this is going? So for those that don't remember, we could pull in Mike, but I've also got the notes for it so he doesn't have to worry about getting all the figures right. OBS, I believe, was written about 2012, and it's a fundamental tool for live streamers around the world. It works a bit like WordPress. For those people that know what WordPress is and don't know what OBS is, it is a core piece of open source software to which you can add functionality via a range of plugins. OBS, surprisingly, can't do a transition where a box will move across the screen. But there are plugins that allow that to happen, and they're so good that most people think it's built into OBS. Now, depending where you get the sources, whether you're an AI or a Google search, a figure of about 80 to 90% usually seems to come out. And for a free piece of software, that's a pretty good market domination. But of course, you've got to remember that there are different types of domination in the market. In the production world, well, they'll tell you they don't use OBS because they've got much more fancy software. But the truth is, most production companies have a bit of OBS hiding in the background doing little jobs for them. A little bit here, a little bit there. Their core product may be a much more powerful and more expensive piece of software, but there'll be a bit of OBS hanging around. But we have to remember that although they are very important people and they do some fantastic events, when you take the number of creators, they're a minority. It's the gamers and the self-publicists, the self-promoters, the runners of their own events that have many, many, many more events than the big production companies. And that's why OBS has such a large capture of the desktop market. Now, OBS is quite an amazing piece of software for what it does. And it is easy to deploy and easy to use. But one Achilles heel of open source software is often they are not as neat and tidy and easy to use as other pieces of software. Adding in things like switching and chat overlays are fantastic and they're really cool when they work. But for a lot of the users, they can actually be a problem just to fit in. And I leave that as a marker for what I will say later on. The flexibility of OBS, again, turns out to be its advantage and its disadvantage. So OBS as a production tool works really well. It's got lots of really cool things in it, and they've been written by a wide range of developers, which means there's been competition in the features. So there's not just one version of a feature. If a feature is really well liked, there could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know how many, because you only usually see the top half dozen apps that fulfill that particular use. But it does make it a harder piece of software to use for those people who are hobbyists or gamers who don't really want to worry about the technicalities. In fact, for a lot of them, their answer is, I don't care what it does, just give me a button on a Stream Deck and I can use it. That seems to be the attitude of a lot of people, and I don't blame them, because having a few buttons on a Stream Deck means you don't have to understand all the complexities of the interface, which can be a really steep learning curve if you use it to the degree in which it can now perform, which is as good as the, I don't know, $200, $300, $400, $500 packages out there. OBS can hold its own against those in many, many instances. So maybe we should call it the Swiss Army knife of production tools. It's got all the things there. It works very well. And then, well, then it all starts to go a little bit awry, because there are quite a few companies who found the open source problem that we all have. If you add something to OBS, you effectively have to agree to the open source protocols. In other words, you're not really supposed to charge for your content either. And what this does is the same thing that happened with WordPress and has happened with other open source products. Once a company finds some really neat features that works really well, they want to start charging for it. And you can't charge in the OBS ecosystem. Well, you can cheat, but you can't really officially charge for your software. And that means that they now open the door for building their own apps to compete against OBS. And therefore, we have the problem of specialized vertical market apps taking little chunks of OBS's world because they want to ring fence their users in their own domain and not leave them open to being subverted by other OBS features. And this is where AI comes in to, well, in a way, help both sides of the scene. Because if you have a really good idea, and I'll take it because it's a really good example at the moment, there has been some new plugin developer kits from Zoom. And people with all due respect, not as much coding capability to do it 2 years ago, now have the coding ability to do it now, because they can use AI to help them code that into OBS. We started off with one product, and then there was another, and then there was another. I've seen 4 this year be announced, which are products which have Zoom interfaces. Some of them work in OBS, but now realize they need their own product. Others already started that last year, and with these new changes, have released their own product. And that's just an example of one piece of kit dropped by Zoom, and suddenly 4 more competitors to OBS turn out. There are quite a few OBS competition products on the Mac side. And that's the interesting thing. You see, OBS works on Mac and Windows, but most of the people that make competitive products only tend to make a Mac-only product or a Windows-only product. So AI helps people now write better plugins and interfaces to OBS. On the other side, it makes it easier for AI to read what OBS does and give you your own version. Yes, somebody in litigation should work out whether that's stealing code or not, because I think that's probably going to be a grey area if we started pulling apart what these vibe coding apps have done. Have they just stolen all of... Oh, let's not go into that. There'll be too many slides. Let's pretend we never even thought about that problem. So there are 12 years of engineering that can now be wiped out with a simple prompt. Make me an OBS type product which can do blah, blah, blah. Put in, add whatever you like at the end of that sentence. Give it to your vibe coding product and make sure you got lots of tokens, and go on off have a cup of tea. Don't have a cup. Go away and have a 3-course dinner. And hopefully when you come back, your AI will have produced you an OBS-like platform. I'm not saying it's as easy as that, but if your AI behaves itself, it can be as easy as that, which is quite frightening. Quite frightening, because if you do go down that path, do remember that you are now committing your production to a piece of software written by an AI whose strategic definition of the product was a paragraph. However, there are other ways to do this cookie cutting, which might be of more interest to people and less scary when you wonder if your AI is going to break halfway through a production. What about enhancing OBS by putting an AI front end onto it? We've already said that OBS is very clever, but it's written by lots of people, and the usability of it can fall down compared to its competitors. But why not just build an OBS front end with AI? Have a pretty version based on what you want it to do in your environment, and have OBS continue as the back end of your system. That could be a more powerful way, taking the reliability of all those years of OBS, but adding the flexibility and ease of use of AI. Now, if you're really successful and you want to sell lots of copies, maybe you're going to replace the back end of AI in the future, but you don't need it to do it from day one. OBS could become the engine for lots of other apps. Now, I'm not going to tell you, because I really haven't worked it out in my head, where you have to be a freeware shareware app within Zoom as a plugin, and where you could remotely control Zoom, OBS, your video switcher. If you've got a piece of software that's going to control all of them, at what point do you have to be loading it on GitHub and making it as a free tool? And if you only use it in your own organization, the answer is you don't have to give it to anybody. You can have your own enhanced super duper app running everything. Does that mean Zoom survives? Yes. Does that mean OBS survives? Yeah, probably. Does that mean everything survives? Does your switcher survive? Yeah, but it just disappears behind your new fancy interface. So who wins and who loses is really up to you. It's up to you as a community. It's up to you as individual users of OBS. It's up to how this whole pans out. I have spoken to people who have apps that are now directly competing with OBS. They can't compete with OBS, as in take over the whole market, but they are producing little vertical markets, little niche uses where they may be able to enhance, if not beat, OBS. They could be a service. They could be an app in their own right. They've all got to look at the business plan and the finances of it and make their decision. What do they want to be? But certainly the options from just a year, 18 months ago have changed dramatically. And this is a lesson for all of us. Just as a side note, I used to be a quite keen developer of WordPress, which again is an open source platform to which you can add functionality with plugins. Now, I haven't done any plugins for about 3 or 4 years. I've done 3 this year. And they've been a lot easier to do than they were years ago because, again, I know what a plugin can do. I know how it should work, but I don't necessarily have to write every line of code now because AI can do it for me. And I was able to create niche plugins quickly. Between you and me, they're not as well written as you do it yourself, but that's what AI is all about. AI is an average of what's out there. But what's out there is a lot of experience in the world of WordPress. What's out there is a lot of plugin examples and the source code for OBS. So the ability to do all these things is very high. And of course, if it's commercially successful, that doesn't stop you going back and writing a better, tighter version of your code in the future. So maybe I'm a little bit keen to kill off OBS when maybe I should be thinking of it as a more strategic partner in the loop. The real shift is not about OBS. It's not even about the plugins that are now running in OBS. It's now about what can we use AI for to allow people who don't have the technical expertise to write plugins for OBS to now join the fray and create little apps, plugins, add-ons, interfaces to OBS, which they couldn't have done before, driven by their particular need and their particular use. Ultimately, the danger, or perhaps the opportunity, is realizing how creators with less technical experience can now produce some quite neat code if they have the confidence to make sure that when it works, it really does work. But it's certainly empowering a whole different generation of creators to build them the tools that they want to innovate in an unnecessarily complex world. Or is it? Where do you think we'll be in 5 years? Well, I'll have retired, so I don't really care. But for the rest of you, I hope that the AI effect on this particular industry is ease of use. That's what I'm betting on. ease of use. So we can spend more time innovating, making our world more interesting, more efficient, more effective, and less time getting all the technical things together. I know that many people in the production world will swear by a particular manufacturer. That will be their go-to manufacturer for everything they can get, even if there's a slightly better alternative somewhere else. And the reason for that's simple. Production equipment is, by its very definition, a complicated world. Better if we ask Mike to name all the video protocols that are available, we'd be here for another hour, and he would still leave a few out. The production world is very complicated, and that is why AI could smooth it over. That is why so many, like I said, will stick to one manufacturer, because they then have one protocol to deal with. That is why the Stream Deck took off, because you could take all those complicated things and put them on a few buttons. So you could press a button and it could make your video sharing do one thing. It could make your app do something. It could make your video switcher do something else, all on one button. It just made life easier. Well, I'm pretty sure that that's what AI is going to do. At least on the surface. It's probably going to create more spaghetti than we ever could eat in the background. But on the surface, I'm hoping that AI will make things easier to use, far more flexible, and you'll be able to niche down to a higher degree for what you want to do for a particular production. So OBS might be seen to disappear because people may not be using it as directly as they are today. And I think that will increase the number of users who will want to use it. But it's going to be interesting to see, from my point of view, how these new tools that are popping up, and I can think off the top of my head about 8 different pieces of software, and that's not including the traditional ones, which we'd always talk about in the past. I can think 8 pieces of software, and I had them written down on a note, but I can't remember what screen they're on now, so maybe I'll find them later. But there are a lot of pieces of software now which are OBS spin-offs, either on the Mac or the PC, and some of them on both, who do similar, shall we say, low-level video production. Question is, which ones of them are going to survive? Which ones are going to find a niche that they can keep to? And what is AI going to do to bring out other variations which don't have to have a replacement of OBS at their core? So my prediction is OBS is going to disappear for a lot of people, but that's because it's going to become the engine, not the interface. Well, that's all I got to say. I tried to not make it as dramatic as I was going to at the beginning of the week. Mike, I would love to hear your views, and I'm just having a little spy on the socials and seeing if there's anyone who wants to comment on it. Anyone you've seen? Anything? Over to you, sir.
All righty, I'm on my way. Here I am. Hi, everybody. I was just actually replying to Tony, so we can actually talk about Tony's question from YouTube right away, John.
Terrific.
And it is related to, he was saying that it was related to OBS. And his comment is that, let me just find it here. AI is not the end of OBS anymore, that AI is the end of Linux. I'll let you give your comments first. And I already gave a brief comment already about OBS, and then I'll give a comment, give my comments to Tony as well.
Well, I suppose my answer is I didn't know it was the end of Linux. I thought it was the salvation of Linux AI.
Yes. Yeah, for sure it is. But yeah, I'll explain that
But
a little more.
but I agree with the sentiment, because it's the same idea. There is a fundamental problem now with AI. if you have an open source product, whether it be Linux, WordPress, or OBS, you've given the source code to AI. So AI can produce a version of OBS. You could just, I mean, I haven't done it, but I'm pretty sure if somebody wants to have a go now, they could probably by the end of the show have their own version of OBS. How much of it would be copying directly OBS and how much of it would be made up by AI? I don't know. That's why I suggested that could be a very interesting legal point. But yes, the catch is that AI could very easily produce versions of all these pieces of software because it's got the entire source code. And with something like WordPress, Linux, or OBS, not only have you got the source code, but you've got the source code of a lot of the major plugins. So if you said to your AI, I want to produce a version of OBS, and you gave it a list of features, and then those are features which are already in OBS, and they probably are because that's where you're going to get the ideas from. It's not going to be hard for AI to just rip off the entire software and produce your own version. And with all due respect to some of the people's code I've seen recently, I'm pretty sure that's what the AI has done. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to scare them, but it's going to be interesting to see, because I've heard people say these things. Oh, I'm going to have my own version because then I can charge for it. I'm not sure that's a very good business decision. From a pound, shillings and pence, oh, that's very old. But from a money perspective, having a product that you can charge for is a good idea. But I'm pretty sure, because I thought of 3 or 4 last week, 3 or 4 ways that I could make money out of an OBS related product without having it as an OBS plugin and therefore having to charge for OBS. And I think, like happened with the people that ripped off WordPress, I won't mention them because they advertise on YouTube and they get really annoyed. But for those companies that ripped off WordPress, did their own version of it, and then gradually produced a different piece of software, I think we're in that position with OBS. And the comment of Linux is a really perceptive comment, because that's another product which has a really poor front end. And the way people justify their own version of Linux is by saying, I've got a version of Linux which has a much better front end. Well, now with AI, it's got to be a lot easier to do that as well. So if you had a niche use for your operating system, then you could probably use AI to make your own version of Linux, just the same way as you could have your own version of OBS. And I think it's going to happen, frankly. So I totally agree with you. Tony, I totally agree with you. It's got to happen, because if you ask to do a piece of video switching software and you look around the internet for ideas and examples of code, then OBS is the one you're going to fall across first. So, and if you want video, and just to take Mike's thunder away, because I know he's going to mention this, and if you wanted a video encoder, you'd use FFmpeg.
Right, which is OBS's go-to engine for encoding and decoding anyways. They're not silly. They know better. So I'll just basically read verbatim what I actually typed in chat so that everybody gets it on video as well, which is AI will be able to take the OBS main code, was basically what John said, because it is open source, and then make you a custom OBS-like video switcher. So if you don't need the 30, 40, 50 features that OBS has, and you only need 5, maybe 10 tops, you could make your own OBS like with AI. It's not that hard to do at this particular point because of AI, right? It would be more difficult if you're not a programmer and you don't know how to vibe code, as we've been talking about vibe coding. You could, if you don't have the programming experience, this is where vibe coding comes into play. And you just say, oh yes, OBS is here in GitHub. go learn this AI. Now I only want this feature, this feature, this feature, this feature, and I want the same interface as OBS has, but now I want to call it my OBS. AI will go, yep, here we go. Obviously not necessarily that quickly, and obviously it probably wouldn't work the first time, but as John smiles at me when I say that, because we all know better. If you've been playing around with AI and coding and stuff, you know that you are very lucky if it works the first time. You're probably even semi-lucky if it works the 5th or maybe the 10th time. But I'm being a little facetious there. It's not that bad. But when it comes to OBS, yes, you could very easily have your OBS-like video switcher. And actually, John and I do know that there are a couple of people that have found that, okay, I want to make, as most of our audience knows, John and my environment was Zoom. They want to make an OBS that is strictly more Zoom. Oh, 4. We know 4 people that are doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that basically are OBS, but Zoom for Zoom. More specifically, not necessarily bringing in video inputs from cameras and such like that. It would be more of a situation of that they're now bringing in remote guests, and that's so it's a true, either it now becomes a virtual OBS switcher as compared to it being a hardware. I still need that camera, I still need that microphone. Now it's going to be that type of thing, and that is coming out. And we do know, yeah, as John said, 4.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm proud. I know right for sure off the top of my head. I know there's at least 3 that I know for sure. But I'm sure there's I'm sure there's at least 4.
Yeah, and that's some of them were OBS, started as OBS related products with plugins and are now developed to their own third-party software. Others have been spurred on by the latest, because Zoom has also been an accelerator in this area, because they have they've rewritten all their documentation for their development kits in AI readable files. So they're all the .md files specifically formatted so that AI can go in and take all the code. Because most code written for Zoom is vibe coded for a corporate, because they want to get a particular piece of information from one bit of Zoom into their bit of whatever backend they've got. So most apps are just simple transfers of data, either one way or the other, or sometimes, if they're really clever, both ways. Just to take an example, you might want to have an event, and then the attendees are all updated in your Salesforce database. So if we go to the Zoom version of OBS, as Mike said, you might have a participant coming in on a video feed from Zoom that you then want to pull in to OBS. And that's a feature that's got a lot easier this year, thanks to the new SDKs released by Zoom. And so more people have jumped on the bandwagon and done that. I just asked AI Mike for a list of 10 OBS alternatives, and it's not even the ones I expected either.
Wow.
Meld Studio, Streamlabs, Prism Live,
Okay.
Split Cam, XSplit,
Okay.
vMix,
Yes, XSplit.
Basic, Manycam, Restream Studio, StreamYard,
Okay.
and IMAX.
Interesting that they brought the Restream and the StreamYard one into play, because those
Yeah.
are both cloud-based. But
Yeah, and not
Okay.
mention Riverside, which is another one, which a lot of people
Yeah.
would probably want in that list.
yeah,
And they've not mentioned the Mac ones either, have they?
no, not at all.
So no Mimo Live,
No
So-
Mimo Live, no Ecamm.
no Ecamm. Maybe I shouldn't have asked for 10. I should have asked it for 30 and see what it came back with. But that's
Yeah, and again, there's been there is a lot of and even then it did actually leave out a few. No Wirecast.
no Wirecast. Well, I did say I did ask it for low price ones, so that's probably why it would ignore Wirecast. That's fine.
Fine. fine. And then there would have been TriCaster 2, which was an old dinosaur one too.
Yeah.
Um,
And as you say,
and
that's before you even talk about in the hardware switches, which are now getting
right.
better and better at taking in
Yeah,
software switching.
that's right. Yeah. And again, that is a big push that is coming out now with the hardware vendors, is that they are incorporating software components or software feature. I don't like the
Ingesting.
word feature. Yeah. They're able to ingest via software now any kind of external capabilities. So a lot of hardware video switchers are getting to the point where they're basically running baby Chromes or baby Chromium browsers inside them, so that anything that you need to bring in that has the capability of being able to be brought in via Chromium, hint, that's a lot. Especially when it comes to WebRTC related products, which we won't go down that road. I promise, John, that we would, that's the hour show that we're talking about, the infamous, protocols. But when it comes to that stuff, but yes, so they're starting to understand that, HTML graphics as an example. You have to bring it into a Chromium browser. If you bring it into a Chromium browser, and then you can bring it in to the hardware switchers. So just like the software switchers. So anything basically you can do in OBS in a browser, hardware switchers are starting to go, yeah, I'm going to have that browser input as well as a function, as an option.
I actually extended the list to 20 to see what else it would remind me of. And there's a couple of things here which I think are quite well for mentioning. NVIDIA have got their own broadcast software now, which allows you to use the NVIDIA card to do more of the processing, green screens. You can do the eye tracking on it, so it'll make your eyes look at the camera, or even if you go over there, your eyes are stuck to the camera. Can look a bit spooky, but that's available. Another one which stood out to me is TikTok have their own version called TikTok Studio. So for those people who want to produce on TikTok, it's a dedicated broadcast software just for TikTok. And I think that's where my argument's going for this whole presentation, that I think these are all being created by people for particular reasons to support other things they're doing. And I think it's going to happen in the other direction, that users who have, what's the word? The daring to vibe code something for themselves, the time, the interest, they're also now going to start contributing little applets, shall we say, to make things work exactly the way they want it to. In a way, it's democratizing software, all this AI.
Yeah. And that actually leads into Tony's next comment that he made too. But let me just put a bow on the Linux side of it. And John's right. When it comes to OBS, or when it comes to Linux OS, there we go. Again, you have your backend core, your kernel, and then you have your, layer on top of that, which is the pretty layer. Now, again, you could have AI make its own Wayland or any type of Cinnamon desktop, but basically you're making a so then you're just having AI make the desktop environment customized to what you want it to look at. And then the back end is going to be the actual kernel itself. And that's the portion that is the equivalent in Linux's world. That would be the engine, right? That's the one that actually looks at all your hardware and goes, yep, you've got all this stuff. Now, here you go, desktop. What do you need? And this is the same thing where John and I are talking about, where OBS is becoming the engine, not the interface. So Tony mentions, he says, OBS is a project, not a company. Correct. It's actually an open source project, and there is no official company. That's correct. The intent of the project is for people to make it their own. If you're not before you always had access to the code. So if you had the capabilities in-house of being able to take the OBS code and actually manipulate it, you could, because of the licensing that OBS has available. And that's a whole other another show. And that's a whole other different hat that I wear before I came on the show, when it comes to making sure that you are properly following all the MIT and all the different open source licensing. I'm not going down that road. But this sort of leads into Tony's question. AI allows anyone to leverage it at scale, correct? When it comes to the code itself, absolutely they do. And then he says, my question is, how will the contributors react? So Johnny, I'll get, yeah, your turn. You answer first, and then I'll give my answer. Yeah.
Because if you're going to steal OBS if the AI is going to come in and steal OBS, which is the dramatic way of phrasing it, coming in, hoovering up all the code and then making its own version, it's going to hoover up all the contributors' code as well. So this is the crunch point for open source software. It's got the same problem that the rest of us have with AI. If you publish something, then AI will find it and can then use it to its own advantage. So yeah, this is why I said it's pulling in two directions. It means it's easier for people to write interfaces for OBS so the contributors could be more, but it's also easier to just go in the other direction, write your own completely different software, except it won't be, because of course it'll have stolen all the software from the other people. And then you take it away from the contributors and take their code as well. So yeah, that's why I just thought this was an interesting subject to bring up. Over to you, Mike.
Yeah. So when it comes to my thoughts on this, when it comes to the contributor reaction, is that the only reason, or again, this is where I'm going to bring up licensing just for a little bit. So just a little bit, without me throwing in my day job for everybody here on the show. So long story short, as long as AI is not breaking any licensing agreements that OBS has offered their open source software to be able to be used for, you can use it.
I don't think that's the issue.
There. And I won't go any further than that, because there's a lot of caveats of, but this and that. What if it's this and that, and that, this and this and that? No.
Yeah.
That's my day job.
I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is, what's the status of that software afterwards?
Right. Yeah. And you have to make sure that if you do use it and you do want to quote unquote sell it, which you shouldn't be anyways, but let's say you did, then you have to make sure that you give proper open source licensing references to the materials that you're actually using. FFmpeg as an example, that would be in the background of OBS. OBS has to acknowledge, even as open source themselves, even though FFmpeg is also open source, FFmpeg's licensing, and this is as far as I'll go with this, FFmpeg's licensing is specific that they say, if you are going to use our product in one of your products, you still have to acknowledge that our product's in there.
Yeah.
Legally.
And if you vibe code, how are you going to know how much of the vibe code your AI got from FFmpeg? How much did they get from OBS? How much did they get from a particular plugin writer for OBS? You're not going to know.
Right. That's right. That's right. Because again, when it comes to FFmpeg, you could also, it's also open source too. So you could actually just you could compile your own version of FFmpeg that only has X in it. This is something that vMix does all the time for theirs, for their software.
It will be interesting to come back to this in the new year, 3 or 4 months down the line, and see how the world has changed. How many of these people that have produced, I can't think of the word is now, derivations, alternatives to OBS with a greater help of an AI product. It'll be interesting to see how many of those are still working, are being used by others, whether they've created a charged version or they're keeping into the open source world. yes, I've been thinking about having a piece of software doing something similar as well. And I've been trying to work out whether it's going to be free, open source, is it going to join in or is it going to join out? Is it going to integrate with or is it going to replace? My money is on making fancy front ends to these apps. That's where my money is. Making a interface directly for a particular group of people, but keeping the back end under more control. So if you're watching this on catch up or LinkedIn or wherever else, I haven't even managed, I believe we went to LinkedIn, but I haven't managed to find the output yet. But please put your comments in. We do read all of them and we will answer them. And it may even give us an idea for another show. So the question is, OBS and other sorts of royalty-free, shareware, open source, whatever you want to call it, different types of software, what do you think the impact of AI is going to be for them? Because I think it could make a big difference. And that's why I dedicated this Friday's Production Professionals Power Hour to the subject, because it will affect us all. Hopefully it will drive some innovation. Hopefully it won't get people into too much hot water with legal issues. But whatever happens, we'll be back next week to talk about it. Mike, do you have any closing comments about the subject? Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, the only thing that I would like to add is related to, again, when it comes to OBS or any type of software video switcher out there, is that you're right. It will eventually be more the engine